Hello and welcome to In the Classroom, an educational podcast making teaching and learning more transparent. My name is Benjamin Stewart of benjaminlstewart.org. Today is April 25th, 2021. Today I want to share with you a recent audio and video that I shared with my learners for this semester, this spring semester of 2021. I'll provide some context first, and then I will share an explanation as to the approach that I'm trying to take with offering feedback on a writing assignment that they recently submitted. So this semester, the spring semester of 2021 that started in January 25th, I believe, and that will take us up to the first week of June. It's a 16-week course. The course is called Thesis Seminar, and it's basically a course that takes the English language learner from the process of developing a theory, helping them develop an actual research project to collect data, analyze that data, and also to report their findings. So this is a 16-week course that's divided into 3 units. The first unit is dedicated towards the literature review. Unit 2 for developing the methods section, that is the data collection and analysis portion of the process, and then Unit 3 dedicated towards the actual reporting of the findings. So we have recently completed Unit 2, which again is dedicated towards collecting the data, and the learners are currently on break the last 2 weeks of April. There are no classes, but students are now at the point of analyzing the data before they begin the write-up, Unit 3, that is to begin May 3rd. So here I'm providing some feedback. This was a video that I created yesterday, and I'll share the audio here with you today. But basically, if you're interested in looking at the show notes, I'll include a link in the comment section where you can find the list of items that I'm sharing with the learners in terms of their feedback. Now, the idea here, I have basically almost 50 students who are enrolled in the class who are participating in their own research projects. And so to save time, to give them more time to spend maybe updating and revising their methods section, I created this basically a list of things to consider, asking students to take a look at their own work and to complete a checklist, basically an Excel spreadsheet checklist where they list their name, and they basically are looking at each of the points in terms of their own writing and see which applies, which sections, which parts of their text needs to be revised, and which parts do not. And so here I'm sharing with you the idea of trying to help learners be more autonomous, that they can look at their own work and based on certain items, certain issues, they can recognize what needs to be changed, and if it does need to be changed, how it needs to be changed. And the point here is to provide them more time to make those changes and also to promote autonomous learning. Now, if I had stuck to the way in which I provided feedback for the literature review in Unit 1, it would take me more time to go through and leave individual responses to each of the almost 50 papers. And because time now is a factor, we basically have one more week before we go back to classes to begin the write-up. The idea is to, number 1, promote autonomous learning, and number 2, provide more time for them to make these changes. Now, the methods section, I will say, is rather short. It's approximately 500 words divided into 3 subsections. So section number 1 will be dedicated towards developing or describing the participants and talking about how they chose the participants. Subsection number 2 is dedicated towards the instruments, where they're going to list not only what the instruments are, how are they're designed, but also why they are applying them. And also the third subsection is dedicated towards the procedure or the process by which they followed to collect the data, along with the data analysis. One other thing I'll mention too is I'm dedicating some time online to assist any learners who need more individual assistance in making those changes. I am asking everyone to attempt to identify their errors, but again, I want to be available and accessible to students if they need more personalized attention in terms of their feedback, what it means, and how they need to make those final changes. So without further ado, here is the description or the explanation of the feedback that I recently created yesterday, April 24th. For those of you who are taking thesis seminar, I wanted to provide some group feedback for the methods section. What I'd like to do is share with you some key points that I would ask that you check yourself one by one, and I'll explain here in a minute how we can do this. I want to share with you some points first that I would like for you to think about and look at as you're reviewing your method section. And then in a few minutes, I'm going to share with you a file or explain a spreadsheet that we'll be using. And I'll bring that up here in a few minutes and talk to you about what I would like for you to do in terms of taking a look at your own work as it relates to the points that I have listed here. So let's start first by looking at each of these points. Now, some of these issues or some of these points that I want to share with you today will relate to your own work, some will not. But I would ask that, again, that you check each one of these points one by one and check your own work. So the first thing I want to share with you here is to check your appropriate word count. So remember that we want to try to get close to 500 words more or less for the entire method section. I would say anywhere from 480 words to 520 words more or less is a pretty good number for the entire section. But also try to include three subsections within the method section, one for participants, one for instruments, one for the procedure and data analysis. And try to include one paragraph in each of those subsections and try to include more or less the same number of words in each of those three sections, approximately. We just don't want to have one section with 1 or 2 sentences and another section with, let's say, 5 to 8 or 9 sentences, right? We want more or less the same number of words for each of the three subsections. So go ahead and check your work and see whether or not you have met this. Have you met this this request for the word count? Okay, for your method section. Now, the second point I want to make, I should say, only cite other sources if you, number one, used or modified an instrument from another study, or point number two, you're replicating a data collection procedure from another study. That is the process by which you are collecting data. You are borrowing that process from another study. In those two cases, in either one of those two cases, I would suggest that you include a citation, and also that citation will be in the references section at the end of your document. All right, so these are really the only two reasons to cite an outside source. Generally speaking, try to avoid definitions and explanations. Explanations in the method section and definitions in the method section really is not required or even suggested, simply because we have really a limit in the number of words that we're going to be including in the method section. So again, this is a very short but concise section. There's a lot of important information, and for me, the most important information does not include definitions and long explanations as to why this process, why this particular term, or why this. Now, you might include why in terms of the instruments. That's okay, but you're not going to need to cite outside sources for the most part, okay? Number 3, next point. State how you chose your participants and why. So in the very first subsection under participants, explain how you chose the participants. What was the rationale behind choosing those participants? The next point, state specifically the age range of the participants. All right, I'll be saying this a lot throughout the rest of the process, is trying to be as specific as possible. And in the case of the age range, if you're including the age range, there might be cases where the age of your participants is not important. But if you're including the range, then we want to be very specific. We can either say the average age of the students was whatever, or you can include the range. It's always a good idea to include the range also, so you have kind of an idea if we're talking about a wide range of ages or not. The next point, review verb tenses. And I would suggest that you take a glance here at the table below. For the most part, the method section can be either in the past tense or the present perfect. Okay, much like the literature review. I do have a note here that says at the bottom, generally claims that are original ideas. I'm thinking now in terms of the literature review. Those could be in the present tense also, okay? But in the method section, past tense and present perfect are two acceptable and very common verb tenses for this section. The next point, include any permission. So if you got permission, make sure that you include who granted the permission and who does it cover. In terms of this permission, it covers, I don't know, the students that you're collecting the data, whomever your participants are. Sometimes these are the same people. The people that actually grant the permission might be the same as who's covered within the permission. Sometimes it's not, and many times it's not. In fact, if let's say the administrators or let's say the owner of the school granted permission, it might apply to, let's say, students and teachers of that school, for example. So I would try to include both, mention both who granted the permission and who the permission applies to. The next point, when stating your instruments, remember to state an interview or the classroom observation sheet as examples. I should say state the interview guide or the classroom observation sheet as examples, not just the interview. I actually have a typo here. I'll go back and in fact, should be able to do that right here. So interview guide. So make sure that you're stating it's a guide, interview guide, whether it's a structured interview guide or a semi-structured interview guide or a classroom observation sheet. These are actual examples of instruments. Don't mention that an interview was an instrument. The guide itself for the interview is the actual instrument. All right, the next point, state appendices as see Appendix A, see Appendix B. And notice here what's capitalized, and notice the punctuation. So here we have C in all lowercase, so that's not capitalized. We can capitalize appendix. We capitalize the letter, in this case A and B. Notice that there is no punctuation within the parentheses, and we have a period at the end to indicate typically this will go at the end of the sentence. All right, the next point, check proper capitalization in level 2 headings. So double check the method subsections, especially in the case where you have a procedure and data analysis. We want to capitalize the main words. This is going to apply to all level 2 headings. We'll talk about this again here below when we look at the appendices, the titles of each appendix. This will be also a level 2 heading. The main words are also capitalized in those cases. If you have any level 2 headings in your literature review, the main words are capitalized. So this rule applies to level 1, level 2, and level 3. Main words are capitalized in each of those 3 different types of headings according to APA. The next point, the use of the passive voice is more common in the method section versus in the literature review. So in the literature review, anytime you come across a passive voice, in most cases, you're better off trying to write in the active voice, but not so much the case in the method section. Again, it's a little bit more common. to use the passive voice in the method section. All right, the next point, each appendix should be on a separate page with a level 1 heading at the top of the page, first line, at the very, very top of the page, with the title as a level 1 heading, Appendix A, Appendix B, and so on. Check for capitalization, and it should also be in bold. Okay, use the original template as a guide. Whatever the original template, however it was stated there, that should provide you the correct example. So just make sure that you are consistent with using that same type of formatting. Each appendix should also have a level 2 heading, and this is going to be the title of the appendix or the title of the instrument, for example. So here, this is going to be a level 2, as I mentioned earlier. Main words are capitalized in bold. It's on a separate line. It's going to be left justified. Okay, that is how to format that particular type of heading, the level 2 heading. All right, now the last point, use the navigation feature in Word to assure that all level 1, level 2, and level 3 headings, when applicable, appear in both the literature review and the method sections. Now I have here an example of a screenshot of a document where on the left-hand side you have the navigational pane, and here you have the document. And if you have correctly formatted your headings, your level 1, level 2, and level 3 headings, they should all appear in the navigational pane. And this is the idea. This is a very easy way to check to see that you are using the correct font styles, and it's also just an easy way to navigate. So it's very easy to jump around your document to go to different sections if you have properly formatted the headings. By default, the template has the correct font styles, but if for some reason those styles got removed, all you need to do is select the headings and go to font style and change those styles. Let me open up a Word document very quickly and I'll show you what I mean here. So let's say that you have a heading, right? And all you need to do is select the text and go up here. This is your styles. And if since all of you are using the template, then all you need to do is select heading 1 and heading 2, and the headings in the template. Now, I'm speaking specifically about the template. These styles were formatted according to APA. I went in and formatted the styles to the template. That's why it looks different here. You're going to have different font styles than the example that I'm showing here, but the point is the same. Just simply go up here and select heading 1, heading 2, or heading 3 from the template, from your document, and that should take care of the headings that automatically appear in the navigational pane. This is also the same approach that we're going to follow at the end when we create our table of contents. Microsoft Word basically takes this information from the navigational bar and will create automatically a table of contents. We'll talk more about that later. All right, so take a look at these 8 points. Take a look at your own document, and I'm going to share with you an Excel spreadsheet, and I'll probably share it. I won't share it here in this page that we're looking at, but I will share it in the post that I include in Microsoft Teams. It'll be a link to an Excel spreadsheet that looks, well, it looks like this. All right, and the idea here is I'm going to ask everyone to check each of these points that I just mentioned. I would ask that you check your own method section point by point. And when you're looking at your own document, some of these points that I've mentioned may apply to you. Some of these you may need to change based on what I'm sharing with you here today. There may be some of the cases where you don't need to make any changes. All right, but the point is that you check each of these. And if I can open up the document here. Okay, so the idea here is to add your name here in this first column, column A, along with your ID under column B. And these points here along the top, each one of these columns from D, or is that C? Yes, column D to column O, each one of these points are taken from the points that I just shared with you a moment ago. And this is why some of these words or phrases appear in bold. Each one of these relates to each one of these columns. So word count comes from word counts. Cite sources comes from cite sources. And I took it in order. Participants, age, and so on. So this is very simple. All I'm going to ask is that you include one of three numbers, 0, 1, or 2. So if there are no changes necessary based on the point that I'm describing with you today here and from this page, right? If this does not apply to you and no changes are necessary, then you can indicate here 0. If you need to make a change, then select 1. And if you're not sure, select 2. Okay, that's basically it. So we'll have either a 0, 1, or 2 all the way across for each of your names here. Okay, and again, it doesn't matter at the time that you're adding this information what the order, just, wherever you, when you put in the information, just continue just under the next row that, after one of your classmates has entered the information. Okay, that's fine. All right, once you've done this, what I'm going to do is on Monday at 10 a.m., I'm going to schedule an online session. It's open. It's not required. It's for anyone who has questions about their method section or wants further feedback about the method section. All right, and the points that I'm sharing here, this will take care of most of the issues related to the method section, I think. And if some other things come up, I will continue adding to this list, or I will talk about it and share with you additional information about it. But doing this procedure, I think, will go a long way. And one of the reasons why I'm doing it this way, so that I can get some general feedback to everyone as soon as possible, so that you can continue making these changes. Most of these changes are going to be small, all right? These are just some small details that I think will drastically improve your method section. Okay, so again, we'll have our next session at 10. It's open. It's not required, of course. We're still on vacation. No tutoring sessions will be scheduled like last week. But if anyone wants to discuss their method section or anything else, join us Monday at 10 a.m. I'll be online, and if anyone shows up, we'll talk about whatever it is we need to talk about. All right? So we'll leave it there for now, and we'll talk to you guys soon.